In August 2022, my marriage of 15 years was facing serious problems. We were having difficulties with communication, money and intimacy, which created conflicts in our already busy lives. My wife often blamed me for everything going wrong. To address the issues, my wife suggested a trial separation. We had 3 kids, aged 9, 11, 13 and 15. This decision was tough, especially considering our daughters' ages. Within 3 weeks of the separation, my 15-year-old daughter opened up to me about her suspicion that my wife might be having an affair. During the separation, my wife proposed that I stay with a friend who was single, had gone through a divorce, and had plenty of space. I wasn't thrilled about the idea, but I agreed to it to maintain peace in our home. We had been arguing a lot, and I didn't want my children to experience the kind of troubled household I grew up in, where my parents fought constantly. My 13 and 15-year-old daughters were also not happy about the separation. They didn't want us to split up, especially because I was their favorite parent. Despite their reluctance, I convinced them that the separation would be temporary, hoping it would help restore harmony in our family. Our financial struggles have been a long-standing issue in our marriage. We got married at a young age and lacked advanced skills, which made it challenging for us to make ends meet. The house we lived in was inherited from my grandparents. Initially, I hoped that the trial separation would make my wife realize how much she and the kids missed me, and that she would eventually ask me to come back. However, in the first few weeks of being away from home, she would frequently call me, not for emotional support or physical intimacy, but to fix things around the house. It seemed like I was just the handyman, the person who dealt with household issues and disciplined the kids when she couldn't handle them. I was fulfilling the role of a father, but not that of a husband. I began suspecting that she might be having an affair, especially because our bedroom had been lifeless for a while. When we were intimate, I was always the one initiating, and she seemed unwilling to participate fully. Then, 3 weeks after I left the house, during a phone conversation with my 15-year-old daughter, she dropped a bombshell. She confided in me, expressing her suspicion that my wife, her mom, might be seeing someone else. This revelation added another layer of complexity to the already challenging situation. When I asked my 15-year-old daughter about the evidence she had regarding the suspected affair, she admitted that she didn't have concrete proof. However, she pointed out changes in her mom's behavior that raised suspicions. According to her, my wife seemed happier and sometimes almost giddy. She was always in a rush to leave, coming home late and dressing up more than usual. Additionally, my wife was frequently laughing and talking on the phone in the middle of the night. My daughter, hoping to reunite the family, believed that if I confronted my wife and exposed the suspected affair, it might lead to us getting back together. In her mind, this would bring about a happily ever after scenario for our family. This conversation with my daughter raised numerous red flags for me. While I had suspected that something might be going on, my wife had done a good job of hiding it. Now, with these changes becoming more evident, it seemed like the trial separation was just a cover, giving her more freedom to engage in questionable behavior. It's fascinating how over 15 years you can become more trusting and let your guard down with someone. I knew that my wife worked for a distribution company, and most of the men she dealt with were older 18-wheeler drivers. Given that she was one of the few women at her workplace and very attractive, she naturally attracted attention. We started dating in our teens and are both 35 now. After my conversation with my daughter and my growing suspicions, I decided to secretly visit her workplace to find out what was keeping her out late. I was concerned that she might be having an affair with someone from her job, so I hoped that when I checked her workplace after hours, her car would be among the last 2 in the parking lot, and she or the person she might be involved with would leave together. I parked on the opposite side of her workplace, keeping an eye on her car to see what unfolded. Surprisingly, she left the building at the expected time and got into her car. I was about to give up and head home when she drove in a direction that wasn't towards our home. Intrigued, I followed her. It was around 6 p.m. in November, and darkness was setting in. She headed towards the highway and drove towards a truck stop, Wanting to give her the benefit of the doubt because of her work with logistics dispatch for truckers, I thought maybe she was there for a work-related reason. She parked close to an 18-wheeler and got out of her car. It was then that I noticed her outfit was quite revealing. As soon as she got into the passenger side of the truck, I started recording her on my cell phone. I drove my car closer, got out, and found a spot where I could see if she was sitting on the passenger side. The darkness made it necessary for me to come closer to get a clear view, and unfortunately, there was no doubt about what was happening. She wasn't on the passenger side. Both she and the truck driver were in the sleeper section of the truck. I waited for almost 30 minutes in the blind spot of the passenger side, hoping to catch her leaving the truck. As I stood there, I could hear what I imagined was the sound of them being intimate. Those 30 minutes felt like an eternity, and I had never felt such intense hatred in my life. When she finally got off the passenger side, she seemed shocked, hastily fixing her hair and dress as if she had seen a ghost. As she descended, she noticed me recording her with my phone's flash on. At first, she didn't know it was me because of the flash and the darkness. I remember her saying, "Hey, why are you recording me?" She found out it was me as soon as I said, "I am just making sure I capture you whoring on camera." Once she realized it was me, she started insisting that it wasn't what it looked like and claimed she was just working. I replied, "Yeah, you're working all right. I didn't know you were tricking on the side." Despite her denials, she attempted to snatch my camera. I pushed her away and continued recording as I followed her to her car. The guy she was involved with must have thought he could intervene, so he emerged from his cab with a gun upon seeing the commotion. He pointed the gun at me and demanded that I stop recording or he would shoot. I stood my ground, asserting my right to record my wife cheating on me. My wife pleaded with him to lower the gun, and other truckers who knew him gathered, trying to convince him to put the gun down. A saner person might have stopped recording when a weapon was pointed at them, but at that moment I wasn't thinking straight. When the guy realized I wasn't intimidated by him, he lowered his weapon and went back to his truck. My wife drove away too, but before that, everyone seemed to be urging me to stop recording, saying things like, "It's public," and "Stop recording." However, I knew I had the right to record for my protection. After my wife left, I called the police and waited for them to arrive at the scene. When they got there, the truck driver thought it was a good idea to drive away, but the police stopped him. I showed them the recording, and he was arrested for pointing a gun at me. He was charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Instead of going to my friend's house to call it a night, I headed straight home. It must have been around 10 p.m. On my way home, I called my 15-year-old daughter to tell her what I had just caught her mom doing and that I was on my way back. When I got home, my wife was already in an argument with my daughter, and whatever she did, her siblings followed suit. She started calling my wife names, and under normal circumstances, I might have disciplined her for that. However, it felt like a high level of hypocrisy when my wife had been trying to control who our daughter dates and what she wears, all while she herself had kicked me out of the house to be with men at the truck stop. She argued that she wasn't sleeping with men, but just one man. This man, by the way, was almost 50 years old, and from what I gathered, a regular patron, so I had no doubt she was turning tricks. I told her she couldn't sleep in the house, and that she could take my place at her friend's house. This led to a struggle, and I started throwing her things out of the house. The kids were all awake, crying, witnessing the chaos in the middle of the night. It wasn't a good scene, but my anger got the best of me. Eventually, things settled down, because I didn't want the police involved, and I wasn't leaving my house. She knew everyone in the house was against her, and she was the one who had done wrong, but she tried to act like it was my fault, and that it wasn't a big deal. That night I slept in the master bedroom, and she slept on the couch. The next morning I called my friend, explained what had happened, and he connected me with a lawyer so I could start the divorce process. We didn't have any shared property, and the house was inherited, so she wouldn't be entitled to it in the divorce. Some people said I shouldn't have taken that route, but I showed my daughter the video recording on my phone, and she saw everything that happened. I explained to her why I couldn't stay in the marriage, and she agreed with my decision. I didn't want to jeopardize her job by reporting her actions, as I knew it would add a financial burden on me during the divorce. When she found out that I had filed for divorce, she suddenly wanted to work on the marriage. She claimed she cheated because I wasn't paying her enough attention and that it was only with that one guy. She said she wasn't planning to leave me, as the man she cheated with was married too. According to her, he had been pursuing her for months, buying her things, and she eventually gave in but regretted her actions. Despite her attempts to reconcile, I saw no reason to continue the marriage. Trying to get her to communicate had become challenging while she was willing to give up the marriage at the truck stop. We argued and fought constantly, and the trust in our relationship had been irreparably damaged. It seemed like a good idea for me to have the house to myself with my kids, especially since I got along better with them than with her. She could continue doing what she does at the truck stop. During the divorce proceedings, she claimed that I had influenced the kids against her, saying they all wanted to live with me and didn't want to stay with her. With a house and appearing as the more stable parent, the kids strongly expressed their desire to live with me. Consequently, I was granted full custody, and she had to pay me child support. As for the truck driver, he faced serious consequences. He was charged with a Class A misdemeanor for his actions. The truck driver, who drove a fleet truck for another company, faced serious consequences. When his employer found out about the arrest, he got fired from his job. I considered showing the video to his wife, but I had second thoughts. I didn't want to push a man too far, especially someone foolish enough to point a gun at someone in public when caught with his wife. Even though I posed no threat to him, I decided against it. Although the divorce wouldn't be finalized for the next few months, I already had my kids with me. Meanwhile, my soon-to-be ex-wife started living in a studio apartment close to her workplace.